Commissioner, take us through, what that day was a year ago today, so to speak, when kind of all that information was trickling in. We saw what the NBA did, and then 24 hours later, the NHL kind of followed in line. What was that day like for you personally?
Well, we were aware in the days leading up to the pause that COVID was here and it was spreading, and it was clear at some point it might well result in us having to take a pause. And we were closely monitoring things. And I had gotten home, I guess it was Thursday night, and somebody said, turn on the TV. And it was in the NBA, in front of a full building, had just announced that a player tested positive and they were canceling the game. At that moment, it was clear to me that it was only a question of time, and I wanted to get ahead of it. I didn't want a building full of people that I then would have to disperse because we couldn't play the game. And so we finished the games that night, and I called that night for the next day a Board of Governors meeting for the middle of the day, because I figured I might as well brief the board, make sure they understood what was going on and why we were doing what we were doing. There was no immediate rush other than to do something that day. And that night we took the pause. Nobody knew at the time how long it was going to be. Nobody knew exactly what form we'd be able to come back in. But we did know that we were going to be dealing with a fair amount of uncertainty, that there was going to be a learning curve and an effort that was paramount to stay on top of all of the data and information, particularly from the medical people. But from moment one, our concern was always the health and safety of our players, of our other team personnel, of our league personnel, and the communities in which we play.
Commissioner, when you look back on this year, I would think you're more than a little amazed that you were able to come back, you were able to pull off the bubble, and now you've been able to start a season, and we've been going along pretty well thus far. Is it something that you know all the things that have gone on behind the scenes? Are you amazed that you've been able to get all this done, you and your staff and the players and everybody coming together?
You know, when you use the word amazed, you make it sound almost like serendipity. And it was far from that. I'm extraordinarily proud of our organizations at the league level, at the club level. I'm proud of our players and the Players Association. The owners have been unbelievably supportive. This took the ultimate team effort and the ultimate team sport. It took cooperation. It took us being agile and flexible. And it took an organization that could execute under any circumstance. You'll forgive my dog who's getting agitated, I think, by this conversation.
Well, you talk about going through circumstances. You're dealing with one right now, adversity, and it's all about getting through it, right? Yeah, the phrase comes to mind. There's always a rainbow after the storm, and we've been dealt a pretty big storm the last 365 days. So, what do you think is something positive, league-wide, personally, that comes out of this after all is said and done?
Well, I think when we all look at it, and listen, sports is one element of all of the problems that COVID-19 has brought on so many people, not to mention the terrible death rate that we've seen. But we have a sport that is beloved by its fans. We've done everything we can, even during the pause, with respect to players and Zoom calls and social media, to stay in touch with our fans. And in a completely collaborative effort, it shows that we can accomplish almost anything, no matter how difficult the circumstances. And we amazingly have been able to do a lot of business. We have 12 new sponsors that we signed. We played over 500 games between the conclusion of last season and the playoffs and into this season. We announced a new very important media deal. And so we're doing what we have to do. And I don't want this to sound like a complaint or a whine. We've had to do it a little differently. It's been a little harder. And in that respect, it seems like more than a year. And in other respects, as I think EJ said, it's been like the blink of an eye, because it's hard to believe we've been at this now for a year. And while, yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel, we're still in the tunnel.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We are still in the tunnel. But the good news is that at least we've seen in a bunch of buildings around the league, incrementally, fans have now been allowed to be in the building in a certain small amounts. You said at the start of this season that you were starting with no fans, but you thought as time went on we would see that. You've been proven right there. What's the message to fans now moving forward in terms of how that's going to continue to possibly grow moving forward?
Well, first of all, let me say that our players, our game, miss the energy that our fans bring in our buildings night in and night out. And we can't wait to have our fans back. What we do is really a function of COVID-19 and what governmental authorities in the various jurisdictions in which we play allow us to do. We have protocols, and things are trending in the right direction. I think 13 or 14 clubs currently have fans on a limited basis, and that's a positive step. But there's a long way to go. My hope is, and my expectation is, that by next season, the combination of how COVID-19 seems to be slowing down on a positivity rate, and with all the vaccinations, we're hoping and believing that next season will be normal. We'll do the best we can with this season. As we're allowed to have more and more fans, we're going to do that. If we can start crossing the border between the U.S. and Canada, that will impact our playing of the conference final and potentially the Stanley Cup final. But we have to live in the moment and be flexible enough to do, in response to the moment, whatever confronts us.
Yeah, I think flexibility has been a huge thing, and you guys have pivoted on a dime and kind of made everything kind of come off without a hitch, even though, you know, there's been a lot of hitches as far as where the world is at the last 365 days. You mentioned next season. I'm curious if there's anything that you take from the unique circumstances that we have with this 56-game season that you like enough to maybe implement in the future.
The divisional play, the scheduling multiple games at a time in a building between the same two teams has been intriguing. Obviously, the North Division, the Canadian Division, has gotten a lot of attention. That's not practical long term. And what's interesting is, in all the polling we've done of our fans, which we do on a regular basis, about 2/3 of them say for this unique season with only 56 games, they find it interesting, intriguing, and exciting. But they also, by about the same number, said next year we should go back to what we normally do. Because our fans everywhere want to see all the different teams and all the different players. If you're a fan in Canada, you want to see Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby. If you're a fan in the U.S., you want to see Connor McDavid and Edmonton. So, you know, we're monitoring what's going on, and maybe we'll do some tweaking in the schedule, but I see us resuming a more normal alignment for next season.
All right, last one for me, Gary. I just wanted to ask you about the TV deal. It was a huge deal you guys announced yesterday with ESPN. It's a forward-looking deal. So what excites you about the particulars about this deal, and what else can we expect? Because it seems like there's going to be another partner at some point coming on board here.
I think having multiple partners will aid in the growth, continued growth of the game. More promotion in more places, more coverage. This is an important linear deal, particularly on the 4 years that the Walt Disney Company, ESPN, has the Stanley Cup final. All the games will be on ABC, but it also is responding to the trend towards streaming, and younger people are doing more streaming than they are subscribing to the more traditional distribution modes. And this is, I think, a forward-looking deal, which is very, very fan-friendly, because you can get a lot more games in a lot more different ways. And so we're very excited about it, and we're excited to be back with ESPN. They seem more than thrilled to have us back, and we're thrilled to be back with them as well. We think it's going to be terrific for the long term for the game.
It should be certainly beneficial for everybody involved moving forward. Commissioner, thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on everything that you've been able to pull off in the last 365 days, and we look forward to hopefully crossing paths in person under more normal circumstances in the future.
That would be great. Thanks for having me. And everybody be safe still, stay well, and maintain your vigilance. We still have a little way to go here.